So are the Eagles really going to go after a premier pass rusher in free agency? Even though the NFL draft is loaded with D linemen? According to Tony Pauline, Eagles are going to go after a pass rusher in free agency. Here's what Pauline said in a recent Birds with Friends podcast with Bo Wolf.
I know you covered the Eagles. I think the Eagles will address their pass rush needs in free agency. I'm not going to release any names here, but just keep your eye on when free agency opens and some of the bigger pass rushers. We'll see what happens with the Eagles. So.
If you're wondering who Pauline is, he provides draft coverage for the Philadelphia Eagles website. And the thing about that nugget there, that little piece of information, it came unprompted. He wasn't asked about it. He just went and said it. And whenever you're not prompted and say something like that, it does catch your attention a little bit. But who is Tony Pauline? Like, is this information, can it even be trusted? Well, we'll find out. We shall see what the Eagles are going to do. Because in my opinion, I would think that they're not going to spend a lot of money in free agency. That they're going to try and save it. That they're going to try and play the compensation pick game and really build the team through the NFL draft over the next couple years. Because you're going to be paying Carson Wentz his contract eventually. And this is an NFL draft that is loaded at D-line. So if it's loaded at D-line, why the hell do they have to go spend big money on a free agent? All right, well, let's get into it then. So Brandon Graham's going to be 31, or he is 31. He's a free agent. You got Chris Long, who's 34, and then Michael Bennett, who's 33. So Chris Long, Michael Bennett, those guys, it's a great defensive line draft. Get younger at the position. We'll probably draft two guys. So those two guys that you draft will eventually take over for Chris Long and Michael Bennett. Obviously, you got Josh Sweat in the picture. Obviously, you've got Derek Barnett in the picture. So there are other guys that you have along your defensive line. As for this free agency class, well, let's talk about it. DeMarcus Lawrence, Jadeveon Clowney, Frank Clark, Dee Ford, Preston Smith, Trey Flowers, Ziggy Ansah, Zadarius Smith, Marcus Golden, Terrell Suggs, Dante Fowler. That's a lot of DNs. That's a lot of pass rushers. Let's take you back to 2014. Major safety class in free agency. Everybody wanted Jairus Byrd, remember? Jairus Byrd, free agent. TJ Ward was a free agent. Antoine Bethea, Chris Clemens, Dante Whitner, Bernard Pollard, and also Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins. Everybody wanted Jairus Byrd, but the Eagles picked up Malcolm Jenkins. Where am I going with that? Well, as you can see, there's a lot of defensive ends in this free agency class, a lot of good ones. Just like there were a lot of good safeties in that free agency class. But instead of spending top dollar on one of the top defensive ends, will the Eagles be able to strike gold again and find another Malcolm Jenkins? If there is a Malcolm Jenkins in this list, I'll throw a name at you. You'd be taking a little bit of a risk because he's been hurt the last couple years. But this is what they did with Malcolm. They signed him when he was kind of like in a downswing of his career. Even though he was a good football player, he came off, not so great season. They were able to pluck him for cheaper. This is what they did with Brandon Brooks, too. Brandon Brooks came off a kind of a down year in Houston, and they signed him. There were other guards available in that free agency class, but they went with Brandon Brooks, and he's been great. So here's the name that I got for you. It's Ziggy Ansah. Ziggy Ansah has been dealing with injuries. He's been injury prone. Only played 7 games this past year, had 4 sacks in 7 games. 2017 had 12 sacks, 14 and a half sacks in 2015. I don't know how much money he's going to get. I'm not sure. And if you can sign somebody like a Ziggy Ansah on a Malcolm Jenkins type deal, well, then all of a sudden it looks pretty good. Like the top guys Like Lawrence, Clowney, Clark, D Ford, I don't think they're coming to Philly. Maybe you can get Trey Flowers. But the name that I keep going back to, the name that really kind of reminds me of Malcolm Jenkins here, is Ziggy Ansah. And that's where I would go, maybe. If you go defensive end, if the price isn't too much, there's going to be a lot of DNs in the draft. There's going to be a lot of DNs in free agency. And because there's going to be so many out there, you might be able to pluck somebody like Ziggy Ansah for less than what he normally would be worth. Because there's just going to be so much, an abundant amount of pass rushers on the market. So, market, draft, whatever, there's going to be a bunch of them. So there it is. My reaction to Tony Pauline and his comment there on the Birds with Friends podcast. I'm Adrian Fedkiw. Out.